Hi, I'm Brianna.
And I'm Akira.
And you're watching
DONTAE'S Boxing Nation.
Brothers and sisters, brothers and sisters, I don't know what this world is coming to.
Hey yo, check this out, this is Flavor Flav, and if you want the whole truth, and nothing but the whole truth, so help the whole truth. Hey yo, you better listen to Dante, baby. Dante!
What's going on, y'all, and welcome to another great edition of the Dante's Boxing Nation show. I am your host, Dante, and we are back. We got a whole lot of boxing to talk about, guys, but first things first, as always, let me go ahead and introduce the boxing panel. I got my man A-Rap King. Check out his YouTube channel. He's always spitting the truth. And I got my man Boxing Ego. Check out his YouTube channel, and also check out the website boxingego.com. Also go ahead and check out nationboxing.com as well. And for all you guys asking for the shirts and the hats, I did sell out, and I appreciate all you guys buying those shirts. But I'm going to have the hats on deck and the shirts probably in about 2 more weeks. All right, so y'all go ahead and cop those. And once again, we always thank you guys for supporting and donating to our channels, because we do this full time. It ain't a hobby no more. This is a real time, all day hustle. All right, and also shout out to my man Tremel Cook, who's writing articles on the website nationboxing.com as well. And what's going on, George? Doing good. He ain't got his mic hooked up, so it's all good. Anyway, let's get into it, y'all. So we're gonna talk about a couple different fights. We didn't do a show last week, so we're gonna talk about the Frampton versus Cruz fight. But let's start with pound for pound, the best fighter in the world who just fought this weekend, and that was Andre Ward against Alexander Brand. Let's start with you, AK. Now, I didn't know, because I was watching the fight at home. Boxing Eagle, he was covering the fight live. But I didn't know until I heard the commentators mention it that AK, did you know that Alexander Brand, he had over 430 amateur fights, and he didn't turn pro until he was 32? I mean, what did you think about Alexander Brand and Ward's performance?
Yeah, I didn't know that before the fight, but yeah, I heard that when I was watching the fight. And I also, he teaches boxing.
Yeah.
So you already know he's a veteran. You know, he knows the sport. He teaches the sport, and he teaches boxing. So he wasn't going to go out there to get knocked out. You know, he was there after a couple rounds. He was there actually just to survive. And for Andre Ward, you know, he did everything he could. You know, he was an aggressive counterpuncher. So you can't be complaining about him moving around, because he was being the aggressor the whole night. Uh-huh. And he was actually pushing for the knockout. He tried to get him out of there. He actually switched southpaw, which he hasn't did in a while, to catch him with his left hand, and he did a couple times. But at the end of the day, Alexander Brand was too experienced, too veteran for that. And well, a lot of people say Andre Ward, you know, should have took more chances, but at the end of the day, Alexander Brand's still a puncher. You know, let's not forget that. It's not like he feather fisted or anything like that. You know. And Andre Ward did what he had to do. He won a 12-round easy decision. You know, of course, is better than going out there and making a mistake and then ruin the whole Kovalev fight. You know, because it's going to be in 2 months. So I think he did pretty well. And I mean, I knew he was. When I heard that, I knew he wasn't going to knock Alexander Brand out.
Yeah, and once again, when you're on that coincidental list, it doesn't matter if he would have went in there, Andre Ward, that is. Even if he would have knocked him out in the first round, they still would have said, well, you just knocked out a bum. Why were you fighting that bum anyway? In fact, the more impressive the win would have been, the more the criticism would have came in. You know, we heard Floyd Mayweather say it way before he fought Pacquiao. He said it doesn't matter what I do. If I knock him out, they're going to say he was already knocked out before. If I beat him by decision, they're going to say it was boring. So we know what time it is when it comes to this situation. And, you know, in boxing ego, I mean, and you know what, we need to get a decaf on the show, and we're going to have one for you guys eventually, because we want to go ahead and really, you know, break down every illogical, you know, point that they come up with. I mean, boxing ego, this is my whole thing. When Sergey Kovalev, when he fought against Isaac Chilemba, he actually hurt this boy twice. Matter of fact, he probably hurt him more than twice in the fight, but yet he still cruised to the finish line. Did me, you, or anyone criticize Sergey Kovalev and say, you know, that's some bullshit, how you let this man off the hook? You had a wounded animal hurt, and you couldn't even knock him out. I mean, what do you think about that? Why are they putting so much pressure on Andre Ward when Sergey Kovalev didn't get a knockout either?
Man, you already know what it is. We know what time it is. The bottom line is most people don't know shit about boxing, and they're going to say whatever they want to say. But my question is this. I got a better question. Why are we holding the new guy in the division who only has 2.5 fights at that division,
just moved up,
a non-champion? Why are we holding him to this style or this standard when the champion who's been at that, who's a known knockout artist, is at that division? He's comfortable at that division. He's knocking people out at that division, and he's a champion furthermore. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But Ward is the one that has to step up, and stylistically, he's not as known as a knockout puncher. So why would we hold him to this expectation of if it's knockout or bust? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But the actual guy who is a knockout artist and a champion is not being held to that standard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Me personally, he went the distance with Bernard Hopkins, a 50-year-old. He went the distance with Chilemba. I don't care because he looked good in the Bernard Hopkins fight, and I realize you're not going to knock everybody else out. And a lot of people are just casual as hell, and that's all they care about. They can't really educatedly talk boxing, so they have these double standards. And the standard shouldn't be for the non-champion who just moved to the division, who's not necessarily known as a knockout artist. You should have more pressure on if that's your real metric, mm-hmm. then the KO artist should be the one that's doing more, the KO artist who's a champion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and another...
Go ahead.
You know what's funny is that people criticizing Andre Ward's opponent, and we already know that Andre Ward tried to fight better fighters than Alexander Brand, but a lot of fighters turned it down. So Alexander was the only one who accepted it, and that's why he fought him. But people keep comparing the two fights, Alexander Brand and Chilemba, saying, "Oh, Chilemba was the better opponent, though. That's why Kovalev struggled." But at the end of the day, they are tune-up fights, so they could fight each other.
Yeah.
So who cares? Who cares which one is the better opponent? We knew that they were going to win them fights anyways. Mm-hmm. All we care about is Andre Ward versus Kovalev. So mm-hmm. all these tune-up fights, we really don't care about. You know, and plus, to Andre Ward's credit, a lot of fighters turned the fight down for the tune-up fight. He wanted to fight some undefeated fighters as well, but my point is, who cares about the fighters? Like they keep saying, "Oh, Chilemba is a better opponent than Alexander Brand," but at the end of the day, they're gonna fight each other, and we're gonna see who the better fighter is, Andre Ward or Kovalev.
Excellent point. And the other thing is, I talked to Ward personally. Brand, and actually you talked to Virgil Hunter, if I'm not mistaken, Dante,
yep.
And they both corroborate this at different times, one to you and one to me, that Brand was actually a person who was in contention for this fight, not talking about last year, I'm talking about this year, and then it didn't look like he was going to accept the fight, and then he later came back around. I got the interview on my page with Ward who said that, and Virgil Hunter said that to you. So it was a struggle to get somebody, and the contract was they have up to 2 fights before fighting each other. So Ward has to fight somebody, mm-hmm. right? I mean, you don't want to just go from Barrera and then just immediately go with Kovalev, so he had to fight someone to get them rounds in. So it's actually not really a bad thing that he got some rounds in with the herky-jerky type of guy. It is what it is. But the funny thing is, like we always talk about, the double standards. I don't know. I just want to expose and put this out there. But Ward versus Brand, which was the cherry pick of all fights according to the decaf, right?
Mm-hmm.
It averaged 742,000 views on that night. I don't know what it peaked at, but those are pretty decent numbers. Those are good numbers. That's better than Lucas Matisse versus Victor Postal numbers. That fight did under 500,000. It did like 400 and change. You know what I'm saying?
And the Salido Vargas numbers.
Yeah, those are better numbers than expected. But guess what? What did Kovalev versus Chilemba do? It was never even reported what that did.
That's
I know it was on a random Monday.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it was never. So whoever is listening to this, go on Google and you tell me what Kovalev Chilemba did on that random Monday. You know what I mean? Because some people will be like, "Oh, these are shit numbers." You tell me what Kovalev versus Chilemba did, since it was such a better fight. What type of numbers did that do?
That is an excellent point. And something else. Hold on. Something else I want to touch on. You know, we done jumped on a whole lot of stuff. But when you criticize a fighter for quote unquote cherry picking, usually when you are quote unquote cherry picking, that means you are picking certain opponents you know you can beat, so you can avoid more dangerous opponents. So when it comes to Andre Ward or even Sergey Kovalev, but of course he's not on the coincidental list, so they won't include him. But when it comes to both of these guys, how can you call any of those fights cherry picks when we already know that this fight is leading to the Super Bowl? It's leading to Ward versus Kovalev. See, the thing is, when it comes to fighters like Canelo Alvarez, when it comes to fighters like Gennady Golovkin, when Golovkin fights Willie Monroe, when he fights against Rubio, when he fights against Wade, we don't know when he's going to step up and fight against a top 10 pound-for-pound fighter next, because he didn't sign an agreement to do it. So how do you criticize Andre Ward when he's basically just trying to get anybody in the ring so that he can prepare for this Kovalev fight? It doesn't make any sense. And you could kind of tell that the decafs, it's all personal. You could tell that they're clinging on, you know, to this criticism of Alexander Brand, because they know they know that the end is coming. They know that the end is coming. These are the last days for the decafs. They know that the next fight is Ward versus Kovalev. So you think about it. If you guys notice it, why are decafs, they're still talking more about Ward versus Brand when now the conversation should have already switched to Ward versus Kovalev. You know why? Because they're thinking the same way they thought when Mayweather signed a contract to fight against Manny Pacquiao. This motherfucker that I can't stand is going to beat Manny Pacquiao, and now I'm pissed off. And that's how they feel about Andre Ward, because deep down, 90% of these decafs and even real knowledgeable boxing fans, they believe, because of the history of the sport, when it comes to these type of styles and these type of opponents going up against each other, they know there's a very good chance that Andre Ward is going to win the fight. So they want to deflect and keep talking about, oh, but what about that last guy he fought? You know, because that's therapeutic and it makes them feel better. Go ahead, EK.
And to add on to what you just said is, like Canelo met with the WBC and Team Golovkin in December 2015, they agreed that they would have one voluntary defense of their titles, and then they would fight each other. Canelo picked Khan, and then we were supposed to get the Triple G fight, so that's the contrast.
Mm-hmm.
And then now
Absolutely.
he dropped the belt, and he's not fighting Golovkin, and he's instead fighting Liam Smith. So the reason fans are agitated in that situation is, like you said, there's no end result. There's nowhere in sight where we have on paper that we're ever going to get Canelo versus Triple G. That is not the case for Ward versus Kovalev. So just like AK said, we didn't care if they were fighting tune-up style fights. And while you're being honest with each other, Isaac Chilemba, he's crafty, but he was coming off of a fucking loss when he fought Kovalev.
Yeah.
Now he just has 2 losses in a row because he just lost to Kovalev. So don't make it like he's just this guy. And the funny thing is, if Isaac Chilemba was that dude, how come all these channels that are saying, oh, Chilemba's way better than Brand, right? Mm-hmm. How come none of them were
talking about him before,
praising Isaac Chilemba? Like, man, I heard people talking about Stevenson, Kovalev, Ward, and Better Biev. I never really seen people make videos like, man, Isaac Chilemba beats all these dudes because he's just that real. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got to sell it.
Yeah. Hey,
you know what? The funny thing, they don't even know who Chilemba is. Mm-hmm. Like, most of these people never saw Chilemba fight. So how you telling me he's better than Brand when you never saw them fight their fights before. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And plus, you know what's funny is that Andre Ward, he's like the bad boy right now. Kovalev ducked him. Golovkin ducked him, and he's fighting Kovalev right now. And you know, HBO is really desperate. You know, to do two pay-per-view fights in the same month. I mean, that's crazy. I think that's gonna hurt the Kovalev Andre Ward numbers because like Pacquiao versus Vargas or Pacquiao versus whoever is gonna be on November 5th, and that's on pay-per-view. And that like 2 weeks or 3 weeks later, you got Andre Ward versus Kovalev, and if you know, a lot of people aren't going to be paying, you know, pay-per-view money for these fights.
Yeah, not in the same month.
With the streaming thing.
Yeah,
with the streaming thing going on, a lot of people are just going to stream the fight. So that was not a good idea to put both of these fights in the same month. They should have pushed the Andre Ward fight another month or something like that, you know. But that's on HBO. I feel like that's going to affect the numbers, the pay-per-view numbers very heavy. I'm not going to order the Pacquiao fight, but I'm going to order the Andre Ward fight for sure, though.
It's forcing people to choose. And, you know, something else that we've been talking about a lot in Boxing Ego, he just dropped a real good video on this talking about, you know, PBC and Showtime versus HBO. I mean, when you look at that the stark contrast of what AK just mentioned right now, they have two pay-per-view fights in the same month versus PBC and Showtime. All of the biggest fights of the year, all of them were free. All of them were free. The biggest fight this year was on complete free TV, and that was Keith Thurman versus Sean Porter. And Al Heyman is giving us like 4 cards a month sometimes. Right? Sometimes we get multiple cards within the same week that are all free versus HBO forcing people to pay for Crawford versus Postal, which we all knew that wasn't supposed to be on HBO. I mean, it wasn't supposed to be on pay-per-view, but they forced Bob Arum to put that on pay-per-view because HBO didn't have the money to pay for it. So, I mean, if you look at what Showtime is doing compared to, or Al Heyman is doing compared to HBO, I can't understand how anyone could say that Al Heyman is a sinking ship and et cetera, and ain't nobody talking about the shit that HBO is going through right now. They are really struggling to
Al Heyman's the runner.
He's the runner. He's the disease. That's what they call him. They say he's the disease. You know, he done infected the sport, you know, with his coincidental disease that he has. You know what I'm saying? So we already know. Something else that I wanted to bring up. You guys remember when Canelo Alvarez fought against Khan? Well, you remember what the fans were saying, right? They were saying, "Oh, it's okay that he's fighting, you know, a welterweight with no chin because this is just a tune-up for Gennady Golovkin." You see how they still defended him, and they said it was a tune-up for Gennady Golovkin, and then he didn't even end up fighting Gennady Golovkin. But meanwhile, we know that Andre Ward and Sergey Kovalev, they have already signed a contract to fight against each other. You guys see how those double standards work? But see, we know what time it is. We definitely know what time it is.
Look at Gary Russell Jr., Keith Thurman. When they were moving through the ranks, what were people saying? Oh, they ain't fought knowing they're fighting tomato cans, and that's perfectly acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean, to say that.
Yep.
And then when other fighters aren't fighting the adequate competition, the best at 54, the best at 60, for whatever reason, then all of a sudden it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
You're not saying like his whole resume is full of tomato cans.
Yeah, I mean, let's say Andre Ward never signed, let's say, the contract that he's going to agree to fight Kovalev after these two fights. I bet you people right now will be criticizing Andre Ward saying, "Oh, man, why? I bet you he ain't going to fight Kovalev, blah, 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 this and that." But because it's already set, they're not even, you know, they can't criticize that. So what they're saying is, "Oh, you know, why he fighting Alexander Brand, blah, blah, blah." But like we said before, the big picture, now he's fighting Kovalev. Why y'all talking about that? Talk about him versus Kovalev right now. That's what's going to be next in like 2 months.
Yeah.
So what's the big problem?
They're gonna be talking about Ward versus Brand for the next 2-3 years. That's how long they're gonna be talking about that. Even if Ward beats Kovalev, they're gonna say, "Yeah, but y'all remember when he fought that bum Alexander Brand?" Well, man, I'm telling you, man, these cats are too easy to read. But since we don't have, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. They just cling to whatever logic. Like, I still hear people say Ward's inactive, but he fought in March and he just fought last Saturday.
And he's
inactive.
So he's more active.
Then,
he's more active than the average big name fighter right now. If you really think about it, not too many big name fighters. Go ahead.
Look at Pacquiao. When did Pacquiao fight?
Exactly.
And he ain't he's not fighting until November. So he technically at this point Ward fighting 3 times this year. Pacquiao's fighting twice.
Roman Gonzalez hasn't even fought twice yet, and Andre Ward has already fought twice, right?
Yeah, so, Broner fought Ashley Theophane. That's it. You know what I'm saying? So this whole inactivity is like, it's just a way to condemn somebody.
Words.
I even hear people say Ward ain't fought nobody since 2006. But what about Edwin Rodriguez and Chad Dawson? That was after that. Exclude that. You know what I'm saying?
It's therapeutic. Like I said before, it's like when you watch kids perform or whatever. Say your son is on the track team, and while the best runner finishes first, your son he finishes like 4th or something like that, and the parent comes over of the son that lost, and you try to make him feel better by saying, hey, don't worry about it, they live in a cheap ass house, his mama only got like one car and it's all broken down, and they family ain't shit, so don't worry about losing to him. You know what I'm saying? It's something to try to make your son feel better because he lost, because he's not as good as his opponent. And this is what they do in the sport of boxing. If you can't beat them, you change the rules. And that's what they're good at doing. Deflection. They're good at doing that shit, But
and this is the other thing is what people do, and this is probably going to ruffle feathers, is a guy like Andre Ward that they don't want to give credit to. They talk about his accomplishments like they were so long ago, like, oh, he hasn't done anything, right? Even though he's fighting Kovalev, like AK just said, it's already on the books. They already have the date and the venue. They still bring up his accomplishments like they have an expiration date. Meanwhile, when Pacquiao is avoiding Terrence Crawford, they say, oh, Pacquiao's done so much for the sport. He can fight whoever he wants.
Yeah.
He can fight Jesse Vargas. He can fight anybody.
Yeah.
So Ward has done a lot for the sport. He's accomplished a lot.
Yeah.
He's still undefeated, unlike Pacquiao, and he had good recent performances, but he can't do whatever he wants. And he's still fighting Kovalev, and it's like pulling teeth to see Pacquiao fight Crawford or Broner or Garcia, Thurman, somebody we really want to see him fight.
And they say, they say Andre Ward, he ain't did nothing since the Super 6. But just to add on to what you just said, Ego, when it comes to Manny Pacquiao, I mean, his best wins, let's be honest, his best wins were when he was beating Eric Morales, when he was beating the African cat, I always forget his goddamn name, when he was...
Ledwaba.
Yeah, Ledwaba, whatever. When he fought him, when he fought Barrera, when he beat, when he had his draw with Marquez, those were, when Manny Pacquiao was really stumping, through the divisions, so, but no one says that with Pacquiao. No one says, what have you done for me lately? And, now,
that's what I'm saying.
Now you only beat.
There's no expiration date.
Yeah. Now there's an expiration date when it comes to Ward, but it ain't one when it comes to Manny Pacquiao, because we know when he was in the welterweight division, he was beating everyone coming off of a big loss. Margarito, Cotto, Clottey, Shane Mosley, Brandon Rios.
Got knocked out by Marquez.
Yeah. They all came off of losses. So if we using that logic, then you guys should have been, then Manny Pacquiao, he should have never been considered pound for pound number one, because that's the reason why they try to say, some people try to say, Ward, he can't be number one because he's inactive. What has he done since the Super 6, et cetera, et cetera. So if that's the case, Manny Pacquiao, he shouldn't have been considered number one,
that's my point.
When he
because
fought,
most of his most impressive accomplishments were quite some time ago.
Yeah.
Like Floyd could say, hey, I beat Pacquiao, I beat Canelo in recent memory, I beat Maidana. You know what I mean? But Pacquiao can't really say, or he can say I beat Bradley.
That's why the biggest question, that's why whenever I ask a decaf this one question, who would you say has a better resume than Andre Ward right now? That's why they will either never answer the question, or they'll try to say, oh, he hasn't had a fight in 10 years, or, oh, he hasn't this. Okay, so if that's the case, since he hasn't been fighting, Who's been fighting better competition than him since he was gone? When he was out or whatever the case is, they can never answer the question because they know no one has a better resume, at least right now. Go ahead, AK.
Or like you look at Gennady Golovkin, he's a year older than Andre Ward. So since Ward is so inactive, then his resume should, since he's fighting 3 to 4 times a year,
It should be way better.
Shit on Andre Ward because that's like your YouTube channel. You say, man, I'm bored with this boxing, and you take 2 years off, and somebody that was behind you is probably going to catch up to you. If you don't do a YouTube video for 2 years, then that gives them ample time to catch up and surpass you.
Absolutely.
But how come Golovkin's resume hasn't surpassed Ward?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and he's a good fighter.
Yeah, and see, the thing right now is that they're running out of excuses because Andre Ward is active right now. We know because he's active, you're going to have to say he's in the number 1 pound for pound. So to criticize him, they're bringing up now, it was a boring fight. And today, first of all, today's my birthday, so it ain't going to be no light work. Thanks, man. And see, today ain't going to be no light work. I'm going to just say it how it is. Rafael, the pig of boxing, he's going to say that Andre Ward fight was the most boring fight on HBO ever. Sure. And Dante, you talked about this. First of all, Klitschko versus Fury and all them fights, but you're going to criticize Andre Ward saying it's the most boring fight in HBO history? Like, really? I mean, and this is coming from a guy who didn't want to go see the fight or promote the fight or talk about the fight beforehand, but after the fight, he's going to want to write an article criticizing the fight, saying how it's the most boring fight in history on HBO. Like, man, I mean, it's crazy, man. And Rafael, man, somebody need to fire him. Somebody need to check him. Somebody need to do something over there on ESPN.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
see,
go ahead.
This is the other thing. I just got to say this. I made a video post-fight talking about Ward Brand because I covered it live, and I used this exact same analogy that I used. Styles make fights, and certain fighters who are content, like Postal, like Brand, they're not trying to win the fight. Once the fight gets behind them and they need like something big, like a knockdown or knockout, they're doing enough to say that they're trying, but they're doing enough to not get knocked out or embarrassed further. You know what I mean? They're not doing things to win them the round. So if they're the Warriors, then they got to step it up to change the tide. And Styles make fights. I distinctly remember an action star, Nonito Donaire. He fought Omar Narvaez, who was an Olympian. And Narvaez was doing the same thing. Donaire was pressing the fight. He's a power puncher. But Narvaez had a good defense. He was moving a lot. He wasn't engaging. He was clearly losing the round. And that was one of the most boring Donaire fights that I've ever watched. Because Donaire's usually action-packed. And it was because one guy wasn't doing what he wasn't making the fight. And Donaire also fought on the Brandon Rios, Mike Alvarado undercard, that Japanese guy, Tashioka, and the guy wouldn't open up. You know what I mean? And the fight was like real boring. And I was like, man, this dude rated so high, I thought this was going to be fireworks. And he eventually got it, but it wasn't until the guy opened up. So if guys don't open up and they're backpedaling, not trying to win the rounds, then sometimes that's what happens. Warren would lighten them up. I do know that from the third row.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the HBO commentary, when Hopkins was on it for the Andre Ward fight, Ego, you didn't get to hear, but if you watch it live, of course, you hear Hopkins was talking about, Andre Ward needed to take chances so he could knock this guy out. Wait, what kind of chances you want him to take? Like, you want him to get knocked out? I mean, coming from a guy like
exactly
Hopkins is not no Tyson. Hopkins is not like a guy. Huh?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, to add what you're saying, he needed a knockout to beat Kovalev. I didn't see him step on the gas.
Yeah, exactly.
He was getting melted in that 12th round, and he was doing, he showed a chin, but he wasn't pressing the gas because he knew what animal was in front of him or what was happening.
But see,
and even back in Hopkins' prime, like he never was the type of. I mean, he wasn't no Tyson going in there trying to get the knockout. Like back in his prime, he used to do the same thing. I mean, what else you wanted Andre Ward to do? But of course, that's because of the Lampley. He's sitting right beside Lampley, that kind of influenced him to show a different face of his. But that kind of was disappointing hearing it from a Hopkins. Like I said, a guy. Imagine Paulie Malignaggi talking about criticizing fighters. But he don't have no punching power. people would say, "Hey, Paulie, you don't have to punch his guy either."
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And that's what made it so horrible is because Bernard Hopkins, he does the same exact thing. And what's so offensive about when you listen to Jim Lampley and Max Kellerman saying all that stuff is they say these same things about Bernard Hopkins, about Roy Jones, Floyd Mayweather, Pernell Whitaker. So when they're basically trying to say, Hopkins, this fighter right here, he's reluctant and he has a permanent yellow streak down his back, they talking about your ass too. They talking about Hopkins as well. So, and we seen Roy Jones sit next to Jim Lampley and kind of corroborate with some of the things that he said before. But now Roy Jones, he's starting to be more on his Paulie Malignaggi. He's starting to speak more of the truth and try to get away from, the decafness, you know what I'm saying, of the show. So, but going back to Dan Rafael, this is my whole thing with Dan Rafael. We're just going to talk about this. You can tell that he takes it so personal that when he says Andre Ward, first of all, you don't cover the fight. So that already shows where your agenda is. That already shows the conflict of interest alone right there. The fact that you're an American and you don't even go and cover one of the best American fighters, if not the best American fighter in the world right now, or fighter in the world, with an Olympic gold medal and won an international tournament, which was the Super Six. You don't even go over to cover his fight. He didn't cover the Barrera fight, and he didn't cover the Brand fight. So the point that I'm making is, when you say that someone is boring, how is that an excuse to personally hate that person? When I know right now, when we watch Tyson Fury versus Klitschko, none of us personally started to hate Ward. Hate Klitschko or hate Fury. When I watch Miguel Vasquez fight, he's not the most exciting fight. But I don't start saying, "Oh man," I don't start biting my lip and saying, "I just hate that motherfucker, that boring, motherfucker," and this and that. I don't do that. But when it comes to them, they speaking with anger. They personally hate them. So that's just a cover-up. That's how you know it's a cover-up. Because saying that someone's style is boring has absolutely nothing to do with you personally not liking them. So, that once again, Dan Rafael, he's trying to get out as much anger and spew out as much hate as he can before the inevitable occurs. And that's Andre Ward possibly beating Sergey Kovalev. So they pissed off for that, man. Yeah. Or they pissed off about that.
And I'm going to give you guys a quick analogy, too. It's always the people from the sidelines who are saying these radical things and things of that sort. Hello?
Ego.
Yeah, we can't hear.
You can't hear anything? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'm basically saying this. What they try to do is they try to bait the fighters. They know Kovalev is going in as the guy who's known for the punching power, right? Mm-hmm. So they know Ward has a high skill set. So what they want to do is they want them to lose the tactical approach, fight dumb, which would in turn give that power puncher that they want to win the advantage. That's what they're trying to do.
Great point.
You know what I'm saying? So basically dumb down your arsenal to give that other person an advantage. Like if you're about to get in a street fight, Dante, and a guy has this long-ass sword, and all you have is a little dagger, and I'm like, yeah, just run at him. Just run up to him. You're going to run up and get poked. You're going to run up and get stabbed. So you have to approach him tactically. You know what I mean? If I'm just like, no, just fly at him. Go run up and sock him. You're not going to do that. You're going to look at your approach and how you need to approach the situation because the motherfucker got a sword. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And all you have is your fist and a dagger. You know what I mean? Not just run up and see what happens and get sliced. You know what I mean? So they want these smart fighters to fight dumb like the people that they praise. They want all the fights to be Toledo Vargas, and that's how boxing works. Everything's not going to be like that. To me, that fight got kind of boring because nobody was making no adjustment. And I've seen offensive fighters make adjustments. So it's not that they're incapable of doing it. They just weren't really doing it. So it was more of the same action with no kind of plan.
Go ahead.
That's a great point right there. That's a great point. And another thing about Rafael, you know, he blocked Rigan Diao on Twitter, according to Rigan Diao.
I was going to ask you about that. Go ahead.
Rigan Diao, yeah, and Rigan Diao, like, he said that he never, like, hashtagged him or tagged him on, like, a tweet or none of that. You know, why would you block, like, a fighter that never did that to you? I mean, and you always criticize his performances. Mm-hmm. And what Rigan Diao has in common with Andre Ward? That they both black? Is that what it is? I mean, that's the only reason.
Yeah, it's a conflict of interest. I mean, just think about me blocking Golovkin. Just think about Boxing Ego blocking Gennady Golovkin or blocking Tom Loeffler and Gennady Golovkin, right? And then at the same time, we're sitting over here saying, you know, he's a piece of shit and nobody should watch him and don't pay $1 to watch this guy. That is a conflict of interest. That's the definition of being extremely biased and having some type of racist agenda. You know what I mean? How do you block somebody?
I'm gonna one up you. I'm gonna one up you right now, Dante. Speaking of that, let's say some people say you hate Golovkin, I hate Golovkin, or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So if that's what you really feel, what fight did we cover last? Golovkin's last fight, Golovkin Wade. You have the video on your tape. So if we hate Chocolatito or Golovkin, why are we actually showing our face, spending the money to travel? But when it comes to Ward fighting, the people who are hating Ward and say they don't like him and telling people not to watch him, and this is sewage and garbage and trash, they're not even making the attempt. They're not spending no money. They're not coming out to the Ward fight because I'm out in Oakland. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I'm at the fight, and they're nowhere to be seen. Yeah. So they're just basically hating from the sideline and not even we the people that they say we're biased for, we still go to their fights because we cover boxing.
And not only are we
we don't hate them.
Exactly. And not only are we giving them the respect that they deserve, but on top of that, they look forward to doing interviews with us. Abel Sanchez, for example, I personally have his phone number. I done been to his house out there in Big Bear, his training camp and all of that. And it's so funny how, like what Ego said, these decafs are trying to say, oh, you know, Dante is just hating, Boxing Ego, hating on these fighters, et cetera, et cetera. So explain to me why these fighters, trainers, and promoters have so much respect for what we're doing. Abel Sanchez, he told me, he said, well, you know, he talked about, you know, my good journalism. He talked about our job to ask the tough questions. So when I ask fighters and promoters and trainers the tough questions, you know, Abel Sanchez, he applauds that because that's our job. But that's the difference from us and a decaf. You decafs, you can't go up to Floyd Mayweather and have him, you know, respect what you're saying, because you done said so much, you know, racist, decaf, ignorant shit that has nothing to do with boxing, you wouldn't even be taken seriously. That's the difference from us, you know. And the other. One more thing, something else I want to say is, you know, when these fans try to play this race card and try to say it's only black people that's criticizing Golovkin and all this ridiculous stuff, what kind of sense? First of all, what would you say we said that was considered bias or racial or anything like that? And what if we said that other people that aren't black aren't saying? We've heard Teddy Atlas criticize Golovkin. We've heard Russian fighters. We've heard a whole bunch of people criticize, and not even so much criticize, but just say, I just want to see the man step up in competition and fight better fighters. So when you try to say it's only one demographic that's saying this, you have to explain to us why there's other race of people saying the exact same things. Go ahead, Ego.
I was just going to say real quick is, like, whoever people throw, whenever there's like a constructive criticism towards a fighter that we give, they say we hate the fighter. Oh, you hate Canelo because I don't like the Liam Smith fight. But who was at the Canelo's last fight at the weigh-in and all that? Me. You know what I'm saying? They say you hate Golovkin, but who's talking to Abel Sanchez in the Abel Sanchez gym? Meanwhile, the known people that we all know hate Andre Ward, I'm in Ward's gym. I never see them. Media days for Amir Khan, where there's a Ward day, I have never seen them in Andre Ward's gym. So that has to show you something. Why are you in? If you allegedly hate Triple G, why are you in his gym? Why are you allowed in his gym?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? If you were doing the same thing they were doing, the same vitriol, the same venom, then why are you able to go? Meanwhile, whoever you think hates Ward, notice there's never any videos from Ward's gym, but they'll be in everyone else's gym, but they won't be in Ward's gym. because they wouldn't have access to it.
And on top of that, you have ESPN, which is the biggest sports network. Dan Rafael represents ESPN. He gets paid to fly to these fights and cover them. He gets paid for his hotel stay and all of that kind of stuff. We pay money out of our own pockets to cover a Gennady Golovkin fight, to cover a Canelo fight, et cetera, et cetera. So who are the real racists? Who are the real biased? Or I ain't going to say real. I'm just going to say who are the racist and biased, period, because there ain't no real about it. You know, so I mean, we know what time it is. One more thing I wanted to say. I wanted to go back to the contrast when it comes to these double standards with talking about Andre Ward being safety first. They were saying some really offensive stuff, especially in the last round when it come to Ward versus Brand. Jim Lampley and Max Kellerman, they were going back leading the pack, and they just kept talking about this racial undertone of like an inferiority type of complex when it comes to Andre Ward. Basically, he's submissive. You know, they try to, go back to the 1930s on some Jack Johnson shit when they kept saying this stuff like, yeah, he's not built like that. Andre Ward, he's not built like that to take chances and go for a knockout. He would rather, take the safe route because that, that's why exciting fighters, they go in there throwing multiple punches knowing that they could be knocked out, et cetera, et cetera. But I'll tell you this, though. When Golovkin fought against David Lemieux, all he did was throw a jab the entire night. And I even called it before the fight. You go back to my breakdown video. I said, you guys are going to see Golovkin fight a safety first fight. I said, I wouldn't be surprised if he go in there looking like Floyd Mayweather, because this is the first guy he's really going in there with that has the type of power probably similar to his, an aggressive fighter. That's exactly what Gennady Golovkin did. And you know what all the fans said? They said, hey, man, that's what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to go in there reckless against a guy that can knock you out, et cetera, et cetera. You see how them double standards work? But when it comes to Andre Ward, you're supposed to go in there, put your hands down, and let him hit you. Why you didn't do that, Ward? Because you're yellow. That's why. You see what I'm saying? History repeats itself, man. And this is why we drop the knowledge, man. We drop the knowledge for people who say stupid shit. People who say stupid shit like, well, hold on for a second. They say it doesn't matter what you say because no matter what you say, you ain't gonna change, racist people, et cetera, et cetera. It's not about changing people. It's about educating people. It's about putting the awareness out there. If it's a traffic jam on a freeway, you want somebody to tell you it's a traffic jam so you could avoid the freeway and take the streets or whatever. It's awareness. Go ahead, Ego.
I was just going to say the proof is in the pudding. For everything they try to condemn, like with new media, you only like slick styles. But you look at my body of work. I do first books on fights that are not slick fights. I've covered Berto versus Ortiz 2 with Edwin Rodriguez and Thomas Williams Jr. They're not slick fighters, but I still spent my own dough and went out there, right? Mm-hmm. Same thing with you. You covered brawls. You covered slick fights. You covered boxer punchers. You covered the whole body of work. Mm-hmm. But look at the opposing side. They don't. The people that they hate, they don't cover. There's not a good Rigondeaux video in there. There's no Andre Ward is a Beast video in there. You know what I mean? There's no Floyd Mayweather has mastered the art of boxing. You don't see those types of videos,
absolutely,
but because you don't get the full spectrum. But look at our body of work, and you get everything. You get interviews from different walks of life, different people. Some people we agree with, some people we disagree with. So the body of work speaks for itself.
Absolutely, and we down to 5 minutes. Go ahead. We down to 5 minutes. Go ahead, AK.
Yeah. I was gonna say that the people who say we hate Golovkin just because we say he don't have a good resume. It's funny is because we're not hating. It's a fact. Golovkin himself said that Kell Brook is his best opponent yet. When you say that, you find a guy who's coming up 2 weight classes and you tell me that's your best opponent yet. Golovkin is saying that. I'm not saying it. He's saying it. So when Golovkin, Kell Brook is his best opponent yet, how can you tell me this guy is down for time? How can you tell me this guy?
You're breaking up, AK. You're breaking up.
Kell Brook is his best opponent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like to add on to what you just said, AK, can you imagine Floyd Mayweather at 147 and he picked the champion from 35 like Terry Flanagan, and Terry Flanagan's like, I'm moving up 2 weight classes to 47. Mayweather's like, this is going to be my most difficult fight. This is a big test for me. People be like, yeah, you fought Pacquiao, you fought Canelo, De La Hoya, Maidana. What do you mean Terry Flanagan's your biggest test?
Yeah.
Again, proof is in the pudding.
And let me say this too, for the fans that say stuff like, if Gigi were black, you guys wouldn't have any problem with him. This is so funny because when I see this comment, I always ask him one single question. What black fighter are you comparing Gennady Golovkin to? Why is it every time I ask that question, they never even respond? This is how you know that they don't think about the shit that they say, and it's just decaf talk. Because there is no fighter that resembles what Golovkin has done that we are just praising like he's the second coming to Floyd Mayweather. You know what I mean? So you can't say
I got one.
Huh? Who? Go
I
ahead.
got one.
Go ahead.
The X-Men, Walters. And he gets so much hate, though.
And he gets hate. But see, on top of all that, well, you know what? I'm going to move on real quick because I want to talk about that. But I wanted to touch this before we shut it down. We got about 4 minutes left. I wanted to ask you guys about Crawford's beef with Danny Garcia. For those of you guys that didn't hear about it, basically Crawford, he had a little bit of heated exchange of words with Danny Garcia. And basically it all started with trainer Angel Garcia. He said that Crawford was a made-up champion and Danny Garcia, he made himself. So basically Crawford, he replied back to Danny Garcia and said, hey man, what's up with your dad? Talking about, I'm a made-up champion, et cetera. And Danny came back, he said some stuff like, I was doing the stuff you doing like 3 years ago. And Crawford, he said, oh, you mean like when you avoided Victor Postal? I'm paraphrasing, but you guys can read the tweets. But long story short, he was talking about Danny Garcia avoided Victor Postal, and Danny Garcia was saying Victor Postal was just some stiff, fighter, and Gamboa was too small. So Crawford basically said, well, if that's the case, how about we fight? Danny Garcia said, go ahead and have Bob Arum, reach out to Al Heyman. And Crawford, the last thing Crawford asked Danny Garcia was, who better, Rob Salka or Gamboa? So, that's pretty much how that went, man. So, Ego, real quick, man, what was your reaction to that? And do you think that that fight would actually happen?
Do I think what? The fight would what?
Do you think that Danny Garcia would take that fight? What do you think about the beef, and do you think he'll take that fight?
I don't even. I think it's bigger than Danny Garcia taking the fight. I have to see Al Heyman and Bob Arum work together on a big fight, like with 2 undefeated stars. You know what I'm saying? So that's the biggest obstacle to me. But as far as I would love to fight. I would love to cover that type of fight. It's an interesting clash of styles. They fought in the amateurs. I believe they're 1-1 in the amateurs. They both won against each other. But a lot has probably changed from the amateurs. They develop your man strength, maybe get taller, learn more. You know what I mean? Fight like say for Danny Garcia, it's like Gamboa for Crawford or Postal. That's all learning. We have that when he was in the amateur. You know what I'm saying? So it would be interesting to see it now at 47. He said he'll come up with the title. So it's interesting, and I would like it. I would favor Crawford, though.
Yeah, I would favor Crawford, but I think that would be a 50-50 fight. I think Danny Garcia is very underrated. He's a lot better than people, give him credit for. He has deceptive boxing ability. When you watched him against Lamont Peterson, at least in the first half of that fight, I was really impressed because Lamont was the one that was trying to box, but as far as I'm concerned, it was Danny that was out jabbing and kind of out boxing Lamont until Lamont, he stepped on the gas in the later rounds and made it a closer fight. But that's a 50-50 fight, especially the fact that Crawford would have to move up in weight. That would be a great fight, man. So I made a video about it. Go ahead and check it out. Go ahead real quick, AK. Go ahead.
I just want to say, man, Crawford will smoke Danny Garcia. And another thing, Danny Garcia, he's saying that Crawford is doing what he did years ago. Postal beat Matisse, and Matisse is, like you could say, Danny Garcia's best win. So you can't tell me, don't ever fight or this and that. But at the end of the day, I feel like Crawford his style will be a nightmare for Danny Garcia, and I think we'll school him easy.
Yeah, I hope it happens, y'all. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. That's pretty much all we got. We will be back next week for sure. Thanks to the panel, Arab King, Boxing Eagle. I'm your boy Dante's Boxing Nation. It's the nation, baby. We out.